Hi guys, so I wanted to show you this video from Boris Johnson. He has been released from hospital and now he's recovering in Chequers. He released this video to talk about his experiences and to thank the NHS. So let's hear what he has to say.
Good afternoon. I've today left hospital after a week in which the NHS has saved my life, no question. It's hard to find words to express my debt, but before I come to that, I want to thank everyone in the entire UK for the effort and the sacrifice you have made and are making. When the sun is out and the kids are at home.
So I just want to comment on this for a moment. So there seems to be this onus constantly on the public to do their job. And of course, I agree with the importance of staying at home, respecting social distancing, and not breaking these rules. And I was one of the first to say, look, the government need to be stronger with these rules. But I don't like the idea that, and what this seems to be happening quite a lot, that it's first and foremost the job of the public to stop this crisis, to stop the rate of infection. Yes, in a way, but of course it's also the government's job. And it seems to me, now I don't want to be disingenuous here, but it seems to me that Boris Johnson and his government would like to put all of the onus on the public and to say, look, if things don't work out, well, it's not our fault. We did everything we could. It's the public for not following the rules.
When the whole natural world seems at its loveliest and the outdoors is so inviting, I can only imagine how tough it has been to follow the rules on social distancing. I thank you because so many millions and millions of people across this country have been doing the right thing. Millions going through the hardship of self-isolation, faithfully, patiently, and with thought and care for others as well as for themselves. I want you to know that this Easter Sunday, I do believe that your efforts are worth it and are daily proving their worth. Because although we mourn every day those who are taken from us in such numbers, and though the struggle is by no means over, we are now making progress in this incredible national battle against coronavirus.
This is another trend that I notice in this within administrations that are right-wing, and you can contrast it with left-wing administrations. So I've seen the president of Germany giving a speech similar to this, and I've seen a similar one by the Prime Minister of Canada. In both cases, they said this is not a war; this is a humanitarian crisis. There are no soldiers that we're fighting. There is no barbed wire. It's not right to call it a war. What it truly is a humanitarian crisis. And if you look at right-wing governments, they like to frame it as a war. Donald Trump, for example, has been talking about a war. We're winning the war. We're fighting the enemy. And I don't know if that's if it's decided to have it like that, to use the war type language. I can understand in Boris Johnson's case because he likes to emulate Winston Churchill. But I think framing it like a war maybe is not the best solution. But I am open to suggestion there, of course. But it is interesting that right-wingers seem to view it as a war, while those on the left see it as a humanitarian crisis.
A fight we never picked against an enemy we still don't entirely understand. We're making progress in this national battle because the British public formed a human shield around this country's greatest national asset, our National Health Service.
Okay, and this is where my cynicism is turned up to 11, because you have a party, you have Boris Johnson, who's been a member of the Conservative Party for a long time. You have this party that has shown complete disrespect towards the NHS for years, has underfunded it, and is now singing its praise, is now singing how great the NHS is, how important the doctors and nurses are, and how important it is to respect them by clapping for them. You know, I've talked about this before, the idea of clapping. How does clapping help these? It's emotional support, moral support, and that's important. But from a party that has clapped and cheered before because they defeated a bill or stopped a bill from passing that would allow the NHS staff to be paid more. So there was a bill to increase their salaries, increase the salaries of the NHS staff. And you can find the video of Ian Duncan Smith cheering and laughing and shaking his fist in the air because the bill was defeated. And this is the same party with the same members, in many cases, who are now saying the NHS is something fundamental and important to protect, and that the members of the NHS must be treated with respect and cheered.
We understood and we decided that if together we could keep our NHS safe, if we could stop our NHS from being overwhelmed, then we could not be beaten, and this country would rise together and overcome this challenge as we have overcome so many challenges in the past.
Now, I'm sorry to be interrupting this all the time, but this is very important. The NHS must not be overwhelmed, because if it is, you will have complete and utter chaos, and you will have a massive number of deaths. But the Tories, in my opinion, are not protecting the NHS because they don't want it to be overwhelmed, but they're protecting it because they don't want it overwhelmed in the sense that let me reframe that. They're not providing everything that's necessary to stop the NHS from being overwhelmed. Because the NHS staff have been asking for resources, they've been asking for more staff, they've been asking for ventilators, for PPEs, all of these things. And the government haven't been providing enough of this. So instead of doing what the government should be doing in providing these resources, they're instead choosing another approach. And I hope I'm wrong when I say this, but I have this feeling that what they're doing is they're limiting the number of people who are going into hospital to protect the NHS in order to protect the government. Because if the NHS collapses, the government is freaked. Okay, the government is in serious trouble. So this is a mechanism to defend the party, to defend the government, not to defend the NHS. The NHS has to be defended because if it collapses, Boris Johnson and everyone else is out on the street. But it's not because they care about the NHS. It's about they care about themselves. But they're not interested in actually giving the NHS what it needs. They're not interested in fighting this the right way. They're interested in fighting it the wrong way. And I don't know who sets these targets, these thresholds, about who and how many come into the hospitals. But there is a limitation on who is coming in. So I give you an example, and I saw a video about this. I think it was on Sky News or Channel 4. A nurse who had given 20 or 30 years of his life to the NHS, got sick, went home, self-isolated. His symptoms got worse. He called 999, and the NHS that had employed him, that he had given most of his working life to, redirected him to a website. Things got worse and worse and worse. His situation deteriorated, and he died in his bathroom. His family were trying to get him into the hospital, and they said his symptoms were not bad enough. So I think there are certain restrictions being put in place out of desperation by the NHS. But I think there's a political angle here all the time. The government could, if they wanted, give the NHS everything they need. But they're not doing that. They're instead deciding that it's not important. And they are instead putting the onus back on the people to not overwhelm the NHS.
In the last 7 days, I have, of course, seen the pressure that the NHS is under. I've seen the personal courage, not just of the doctors and nurses, but of everyone. The cleaners, the cooks, the healthcare workers of every description. Physios, radiographers,
These are the people that your party called unskilled labour that we don't want in the country anymore. These are the people that were a burden on the state. These are the people who were not important just a few months ago. Now, I really hope that Boris Johnson is having a road to Damascus conversion here, that he has opened his eyes and he said, look, actually the NHS is something worth saving. I'm going to fight tooth and nail in order to save it. But I'm afraid my optimism is misplaced.
Pharmacists who've kept coming to work, kept putting themselves in harm's way, kept risking this deadly virus.
And it will really, really make me angry if this is not a road to Damascus conversion. Because if he's sitting here after recovering from this, and I'm glad that he has recovered, really, I don't wish ill on any human. There are some exceptions, but I'm not wishing ill on Boris Johnson. Let's leave that aside for a moment. But if he has come through this and he has seen at first hand the importance of the NHS, how ordinary people are important, and as he said, even cleaners and cooks or whatever, I truly hope that this will be enough for him to say, we need to do something for them. They need to be treated with the respect that they deserve.
It is thanks to that courage, that devotion, that duty, and that love that our NHS has been unbeatable. I want to pay my own thanks to the utterly brilliant doctors, leaders in their fields, men and women, but several of them for some reason called Nick, who took some crucial decisions a few days ago, for which I will be grateful for the rest of my life. I want to thank the many nurses, men and women.
And please, instead of just saying thank you to them, as soon as you're back in Parliament, and I'm pleading with Boris Johnson to do this, immediately give these people a pay rise. Immediately do whatever is possible to make sure that they have the equipment that they need. Move heaven and earth. This could be your legacy, Boris. Your legacy could have been the Tory who actually cared about the NHS, the Tory that turned the world around for the NHS. That could be your legacy. Maybe you won't be politician by the end of the year, Prime Minister by the end of this year. Maybe you won't be Prime Minister by the end of the normal parliamentary session, 2024, whatever it is. Maybe you will be kicked out, but maybe you can be remembered for the Prime Minister who got sick, went into hospital, was cured by the NHS that he was working to destroy, and turned around and said, no, I am going to do the right thing. I'm going to fight for those people that saved my life. And if he does that, I will cheer him every day for that.
Whose care has been so astonishing. I'm going to forget some names, so please forgive me, but I want to thank Poling and Shannon and Emily and Angel and Connie and Becky and Rachel and Nikki and Anne. And I hope they won't mind if I mention in particular 2 nurses who stood by my bedside for 48 hours when things could have gone either way. They're Jenny from New Zealand, in Cargill on the South Island to be exact, and Luis from Portugal near Porto.
People who are not British, people who are not originally British at least. Now, I hope that Boris Johnson is doing this because he truly feels it and he's not trying to play political games here. And, you know, I am extremely critical of Boris Johnson. You know me if you've been watching this channel. But part of me hopes that there is this humanity within him to say that I truly care about these people and I'm not using them as political pawns to present myself in some other way that I don't truly feel. I hope I'm wrong here. Part of me still clings on to that hope.
And the reason in the end my body did start to get enough oxygen was because for every second of the night, they were watching and they were thinking and they were caring and making the interventions I needed. So that is how I also know that across this country, 24 hours a day, for every second of every hour, there are hundreds of thousands of NHS staff who are acting with the same care and thought and precision as Jenny and Lucy.
Sorry, I just want to go back a little bit there. You see here a van. Just a moment.
And thought and precision as Jenny and Louise. That is why we will defeat this coronavirus of NHS staff.
Sorry, missed that. So it says here, let's support Boris by clapping at 8 p.m. tonight, as we do every week. See, this image here destroys everything that I've been asking Boris Johnson to do just up until this point. I honestly say I haven't watched this video before loading it so you guys can see it. I haven't actually seen it. So when I saw this, I was shocked. I'm seeing it now and I'm shocked. What's wrong with this image? The clapping that people have been doing is for the NHS, for what they have done. That they have worked through this. They have given everything, every fiber of their being to try and save lives. Well, what has Boris Johnson over his career done for the NHS? I'd like someone to give us some examples of things that Boris Johnson has done for the NHS. The NHS deserves respect. Boris Johnson does not deserve respect. Boris Johnson needs to earn respect. The NHS deserves respect because it's there, it has proven itself. The staff, everyone, the auxiliaries, everyone who has worked with the NHS deserves respect for everything they do. The NHS as an entity deserves respect. Boris Johnson does not deserve respect. He needs to earn respect. And it's frankly insulting to put Boris Johnson next to the NHS like that and demand a clap for it. I can imagine many people would probably agree with me. And maybe some people would think, no, it's justified that Boris Johnson is the Prime Minister. But this is not about the Prime Minister. This is about someone who hasn't cared about the NHS for decades. And now they're expecting, because this was set up by the party. This is not, I I'm extremely doubtful that this was implemented by the NHS. This is a political message. Boris and the NHS together. We love the NHS. You see the heart? We love Boris. The cynicism, my own cynicism, is probably rivaled by the Conservative Party. There are no depths which they will stoop. Remember, this is the party that was cheering for NHS staff not to get their pay rises. And now they're saying, we love the NHS just as much as we love Boris, and you should love Boris as much as you love the NHS.
Who are acting with the same care and thought and precision as Jenny and Louise. That is why we will defeat this coronavirus and defeat it together.
Yeah, we will not defeat it by using the right technology. We'll not defeat it by providing these staff with the tools they need. No. We will not defeat it that way. We'll defeat it by caring, by not meeting with our friends or whatever. That's the way we'll defeat it. And by clapping. This is how we'll defeat it, yes?
We will win because our NHS is the beating heart of this country.
And we'll defeat it with platitudes. So at the beginning of this, I actually believed that maybe Boris really did care about the staff. He did care about the NHS. That this was perhaps, as I said on numerous occasions, a road to Damascus conversion. That Boris had seen it from in first person and said to himself, wow, this is actually something important to treasure and maintain. And instead, I feel this has just been used as a political stunt to defend the Conservative Party. And now, because the public will associate Boris Johnson with the NHS, it will be easier for them, the Tories, to sell it off, to privatise it, to do it piecemeal, of course, do it bit by bit, part by part will be sold off. And anyone who criticises will say, well, how could you actually think that? Look at the way Boris has spoken about the NHS. Look at how he has connected with these ordinary people who make up the NHS.
It is the best of this country. It is unconquerable. It is powered by love. So, thank you from me, from all of us, to the NHS.
And not a word about what you're going to do for those staff. You're going to give them love. You're going to give them claps. You're going to cheer for them. You're going to say that they're fantastic and they've done everything they can. But you're not going to provide them with anything. Why was this video not about, I have seen the errors of my ways. I have seen how this party has treated the NHS with contempt. And now we're going to completely do a 180 and change that. We're going to invest and give them what they need. We're not going to play political games and attempt to win over the hearts and minds of the public, not the NHS. We don't give a crap about the NHS. We'll use it as a tool. This is what I'm taking from this video. This is what I'm taking from Boris Johnson's speech. You know, I had some respect for him, and I still cling on for this hope that there's some humanity in him. But this video degrades that hope, degrades the chance that there's some humanity left in Boris Johnson. Is he just an empty shell of platitudes, of fakery? You know, we see his hair ruffled up here. His tie is a bit off. Is he back to the old Boris Johnson again? He was in hospital, he got a reboot, and now he's back to the old Boris Johnson again. Of pretending to be a man of the people, pretending to be a bit of a buffoon.
Let's remember to follow the rules on social distancing, stay at home.
And now we're back to the original message from the beginning. The onus is on the public. He's not mentioned one thing about what the government should be doing, or what the government has done, or how it hasn't done very much, and what the government should be doing. He's talked about how the public need to do more, stay at home, don't go out. And as I've said before, I agree with that. But there is nothing here about what he should have done, why he's thankful, because he was not thankful before, and why his government should be doing more. Really, he knows that the government have been dragging their feet, to put it mildly, to put it kindly even. He knows that. And he doesn't have any humanity in him to say, look, we were wrong. We should have seen this. We should have given the NHS everything they needed. I'm sorry to say, but I'm just seeing it as another political game he's playing.
Protect our NHS and save lives. Thank you and happy Easter.
That's all I have to say. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you think. As always, they're much appreciated. Thanks.